The Maroon White Pod brought to you by Citylink. For bookings, timetables, updates and any other information, head to citylink.ie. Welcome along to the Maroon White Pod. So I'm here this evening with Gerry Kearney, who's previously been involved with Turloughmore and Cappataggle in the past, and we're going to look back on the senior prelim quarterfinals. Three of them games only took place because Jack Regan, who is centre half back for the Craughwell Intermediates, his father sadly passed away. So condolences to everyone in Craughwell and to the Regan and extended family on the sad passing of Jack's father there. So Thomas's and Craughwell now takes place on Saturday, and in the intermediate, then Craughwell and Clymer takes place tomorrow night on Wednesday evening. So those two games are the two games called off, but we did have the two relegation senior games as well. We had the senior B action, and Hasker and Beha is going to go to a replay. I wasn't there myself, but just from listening to no reports, sounded like an absolute cracker. And then the three prelims in the intermediate and the two relegation games took place as well. So a huge amount to get through this evening. But Gerry, first of all, from a spectacle and maybe intensity point of view, we all want close games around this time of year. We really didn't get it, unfortunately, in the senior championship over the weekend.
No, Paul, a little bit disappointing, to be fair. I was at the three games over the weekend in Athenry, and I suppose you'd be going there expecting, they'd be tight. There were some local derbies in it, and you'd be expecting tight games and, the passion of the parish coming out. But it just didn't happen in the games for whatever reason. And I don't know, as it turns out, it was all the teams that came out third in their groups that actually ended up getting the beatings are in it. And no, not taken away from the teams that went out and won Castlegar, Clarinbridge and Cappataggle. They were professional, they went about their jobs. But I think if you're a spectator paying in, you didn't probably get value for money that you were expecting at the weekend,
Is there a slight gap there maybe between the top eight and the next eight, do you feel?
Like any competition, I think there's always a bit of a gap when you start. Like the top eight will always be strong. If you look across any other Hurling counties if you look at Offaly, and if you look at Kilkenny, and you look at Limerick, there's always the top few, the top 6 to 8. There's always a bit of a gap there to the next few. And in fairness to Galway and the county board, they've tried to bridge that gap. They've brought the competition down from 20 down to 16. They're trying to make it as competitive as possible, putting in the Senior B there, which is a really competitive championship. And then the intermediate, again, is really competitive this year. So they are trying to make that as good as possible. But when it comes to the prelim stage, whatever, this year definitely it does show up a gap. Yeah, it does.
Anything we can do to bridge that or get maybe teams closer? Or do you even think maybe, because I know in some counties they do have 12, and maybe counties might find that rootless, but I suppose then we have a senior B competition, we have an intermediate competition as well, so it's hard to find a solution to when you think of all those competitions.
No, listen, I think you could come up with loads of solutions, but at the same time, I don't think any clubs will want to go and lose their senior status. So I think we have it down to 16. I don't think the clubs will vote to get it down any further, if I'm being fair. I think maybe what some clubs are probably saying is the Senior B and maybe the intermediate, the top few in the intermediate, come together and maybe make a 12 or a 16 for a Senior B, and that's your intermediate teams going forward. That could be a possible solution. I know that was mooted the last time and didn't carry. But for your Senior A, I can't see it going below 16. And I think, listen, in the main, there probably is good 16s. And everyone going there at the weekend felt there was good games in prospect, and it just didn't happen for whatever reason, And I don't know, is it were some teams satisfied? Listen, we're out of the relegation. There's a certain thing on that when you're safe in Senior A. You kind of say, God, that's it, and it's great now, and we're safe. And I don't know, then do they just not kick on? So there's been lots of questions asked of some of the teams that won as well the weekend. But to be fair to them, they went about their jobs professionally and got it done.
Look, so at this senior prelim quarterfinals, as I mentioned, 3 took place. Clarinbridge 322, Ardrahan 18 points, and then we had 2 games on Sunday then as well. Castlegar 225, Kilconieron 13 points, and then the Cappataggle 327, Clarinbridge 215. On that first one, and I was talking last week on the podcast, and we were, I suppose, going through the games, and we were looking at Clarinbridge and Ardrahan, and before the game, maybe we had a few lingering doubts over Clarinbridge because they were really sloppy, it's fair to say, in that game against Loughrea, but it was a really polished and assured performance, and even defensively, they definitely did look more solid in this game.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I suppose Clarinbridge looked at their team from the week before, and I think they moved Dylan Dunn into centre back, and I was very impressed with Dylan Dunn in the under-20 final the week before. I thought he was really assured centre back, given exhibition, and I know he was captain for Clarinbridge, but he was really the one that carried the fight, and he went into centre back the last day, and I think, he probably carried that form on a little bit. I like him because I think he's a no-nonsense hurler, and he holds and mends his position well. He's a good distributor of the ball, and for such a young age, he's a good leader. So I think that solidified him. TJ Brennan was solid. I suppose it might have helped TJ that Johnny Glynn wasn't there. I know there was talk coming in: was he going to be there or not going to be there? So, like, TJ might have expected a more difficult afternoon with Johnny Glynn on top, in the edge of the square on top of him. That didn't happen. So probably an easier afternoon. But even Sean Murphy really tore into the last end, and as a set of six backs, I think they were more assured the last day. Midfield is well played well. And, going forward, they were just very lively. They were very lively all over. And Mark Kennedy got a goal. I know he was taken off at half time. I don't know, was he injured or whatever, but he got a good goal and was busy before he went off. But in fairness to Michael Daly, when he came on, Michael Daly just offered a little bit of an outlet for ball into the corner and a high one or two in. And I suppose what they'll probably be most happy about is they've got Keane Salmon back on the pitch again for a few minutes near the end. So, like, all in all, they scored 322. If you probably ask the Clarinbridge themselves, was it a polished performance overall? They'd probably say not. But to score 22, not concede a goal, is a good day. A good day at the office for me in any day world.
Bringing someone like Sean Kilduff back into the team too. Maybe he wasn't there early on in the year, but it's
Yeah,
just showing the value too of bringing an experienced player back into the starting 15 as well.
absolutely. Yeah, and I forgot to mention Sean. Sean had a good impact in midfield as well. Lean and Keane Dunn. Like, they all worked well in the way they set up. Gavin Lee had a rare old battle, so he had with Derek Fahey. So yeah,
Keenan Fahey.
Keenan Fahey. He had a great battle with him, and anywhere Gavin went, Keenan seemed to go with him. So I think it was kind of the plan to pull him out of centre back a little bit, and that probably worked. But Gavin was definitely on form, and his brother David was very busy up and down the line, and they left a lot of space in front of Joshua Ryan. And in fairness to him, when he gets space, he can do damage. And even in fairness to Evan Ireland, it'll often be labelled that. I mean, even the supporters around me from Clarinbridge, that he scores a lot from frees, but what did he do from play? But like, he racked up a good few scores from play the last game. Was really busy and really hungry for ball.
On that, you mentioned Mark Kennedy got the goal. Joshua Ryan got another goal. He seems to
Yeah,
have this ability to take goals this year. David Lee got
yeah,
a goal. The way
goal.
they got all those three goals, they worked them really well.
Really, really well. Like, the first one was kind of a ball into the square, the danger area, and it was floating around there. Mark Kennedy got to it and finished it. Really, really good. Joshua Ryan's goal is a bit different than whereby he went out, collected the ball, turned his man, fired it into the corner, and David Lee scored a really good goal as well. So there were three well taken goals, but like, I'd say a lot of them were probably works from the training ground. You can see Clarinbridge are probably coming into a pattern now, and to be fair, I don't think any team that's in any of the four teams that are the three teams that can play Clarinbridge in the next round will fancy meeting them. Like, Clarinbridge haven't hit form yet. They're coming through nicely, and whoever will get them will earn it. Will definitely earn it in the next round.
Where do you think Clarinbridge are now after this 13-point victory over Ardrahan?
for me, of the teams, and it depends who wins the next day, but for me now, based on the weekend, I would have Clarinbridge in fifth position, fifth or sixth going there now. So if Thomas's come through, you're probably saying, well, Thomas's are probably a bit higher and they pushed them down one or so. But for me, Clarinbridge, based on the weekend and the hurling they were playing, you could see what they were trying to play. I'd be pushing them up there fairly highly. So that's why I'm saying any of the three teams that get them the weekend won't particularly want to be playing them, you know.
Are you nearly saying there you don't want Turlough to get them?
Oh no, not necessarily. Listen, Clarinbridge and Turlough will, if it's thrown together, it'll be a battle, both managements, but it'll be a good tactical battle on the sideline, and it'll also be a good battle on the field. But listen, if Turlough get them, and if Turlough's aim is to win the cup this year, they're going to have to beat whatever's in front of them from now on. There's no second chances. So if Clarinbridge is that, or whoever it is that comes across their path, they've got to take them if they want the Tom Cannon in 2024. You know.
Just on it, it's probably a common theme. We're going to talk about the three teams that were defeated in these prelims. It's very tough now for them to look back on 2024 as a success, because I suppose it's just the last game they've played, they got a heavy beating and they don't get that second chance to put it right.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose for Ardrahan, although for me, of the three defeated teams the weekend, I think Ardrahan put up the best fight. If I be honest, I think they really did in the first half. Was a close game, you know, and they were trying to play to a structure, but in the end, class will come out, and that just stood. But like, if you're getting bet, you have nothing again now. Back again, there's nothing to go back training for until January or February or whenever. So like, it's a long winter for you now. But again, I think Ardrahan will be happy enough in that, you know, there's a bit of progress there from last year. That's what I would say for themselves. And Kilconieron then, who we'll be talking about in a few minutes, and Kilconieron and Killimordaly will probably have as well a long winter going, God, where do we go from here? But I do think for Kilconieron, I said this when I was on before, that they do have talent coming through. It might take a few years for them to gel, but they did win under 20B this year. So they do have some players coming through there. Missing Ian McGlynn, if they get him back on the field, he's a big addition. And, you know, it was a big occasion for them as well in the preliminary quarter final. Cashel just showed that little bit of know-how, and then Killimordaly and Cashel and Cappy, I expected that to be closer, and just didn't happen on the day for them. So I think the teams that lost will feel it'll be a long winter for them, and it'll be probably a lot of soul searching as well to see where they're going from here, you know.
It's the thing with Ardrahan there, isn't it? It was like 1-9 just right before the break, and Clarinbridge get that second goal. Like, it was just a killer because they were competing so well. And then I suppose when Clarinbridge get that second goal, they had to chase it, and it just got away from them in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And then like, they had to push Keenan out as centre back as well. So like, when they were pushing Keenan out the centre back, that kind of, you just don't have that authority there at 6. You know, in fairness to him, he's a very, very good hurler. He's a county player. He's able to command that position well. And just when you're trying to chase a game and switch around your team, that probably didn't happen all year. So even lads, it's only a small thing, but if you're moving your 6 and you're putting someone else in there that maybe hadn't played there throughout the year, the whole 6 backs, it kind of upsets it. But like, they were impressive, as you said. There was only a goal in it at one stage, and then all of a sudden the second goal. You know yourself that if a team like Clarinbridge get a second goal and they tack on a few points, very hard to pull them back. You know, it is very hard to pull them back.
If we're to look at the second quarter final, it was the first game in Kenny Park at 1:00. Castlegar, Kilconieron, Castlegar 225, Kilconieron 13 points. Just on this Castlegar, they were probably been searching for this performance after the first game that they were really trying to go after, because just after that first game, for whatever reason, they didn't hit the heights that they were probably looking to consistently hit throughout the championship.
Yeah, no, and I suppose they were looking for it. And like, when I heard the team announced, Greg Thomas was actually out, so you were kind of going, God, this could be a potential banana skin for them. You know, Greg is a big player for them. He's joint captain this year, so you were kind of going, right, where are things? But they kind of tweaked things a little bit. Like Gerry Farher, although he's named at 11, he kind of moved inside, and Sean Neary played a bit of the game, or a lot of the first half that I seen at 11, and that seemed to kind of work. You know what I mean? They worked really hard in the backs. They were very solid, very hard to get in. And then midfield, they moved the ball quick. They did have a plan. It was moved into the forwards quick. There was very good recycling going on. Actually, an awful lot, I suppose, I haven't seen a lot this year, but an awful lot of side to side. So if a wing forward, a corner forward got it, if there was a pass crossfield to a 10 and they were free, they were giving it. And I just felt Castlegar's movement seemed to nearly bamboozle Kilconieron in some ways. There was always free men. For if I got a ball in the 13 channel, there was always a free man either in the 10 channel or even the 12 channel for me to pass that ball, and they just seemed to have a lot of room. And I suppose for them to put that score up that they did, the 225, very, very impressive. Like, obviously, when you get a free in any place, Gerry Farrar is just excellent on the frees, and it's a score every time. And to have that outlet on the field is brilliant. But the rest of them did match up. Like Mark Gill was good, Sean Neary was really good, and Simon Thomas, I thought he came up in the end. He got 2 points from centre back. Really good at. He's a really good ball playing centre back. He's able to find his pass out, when, especially if they go through the lines. He's able to pass that out, and they found that bit of form. And I suppose the key for them now, really, and the thing is, Paul, is can they keep that and bring that into the quarter final? So whatever they get in the quarter final, whatever team, can they bring that in there and really push on? And if they can get the likes of Greg Thomas back. But I just thought the forwards the last day flowed really well. Darren Neary worked really hard up and down that line. Like really, really hard, and can hit some nice scores.
Isn't Darren Neary the type of player we're nearly crying out for, even within a Galway senior setup? Of like, maybe in the past we've had these kind of a physical wing forwards, but these explosive, pacey wing forwards that are going to work hard and going to get scores. Because his all-round game this year, even I know the they were well beaten against Sarsfields in the second round, he was
Yeah.
still one of the big positives that day.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair to him, this year he's definitely stood up to the plate. I would have found over the last 2 years that he was probably a little bit inconsistent. And I don't know, was that because maybe he was moved around in different positions? I would have noticed, especially when I've been there on the opposition sideline, they've been moving him an awful lot. But this year, they're seeming to leave him at 12. He's getting on with his job. He seems to know his role. I suppose that's one thing that Matey will bring, that experience, that every player will know their role. Joe Leary as well. They have an experienced management team, and I think that's rubbing off on Dara, because he's working hard and wants to work hard for the team, which is really important. He really does. He's putting the head down and he's going at it. And like Sean the last day as well played really well, and they're beside each other. So it was really good to see the way they work. But Dara, for me, definitely this year, 2024, he's been one of the highlights for Cashel in all the games. I think he's been really consistent.
All round, it has to be like, as we mentioned there, Cashel, they obviously didn't win their against Sarsfields or Ardrahan in their last two group games. They've got things back on track. They scored 227. They only conceded 13 points. So all round, it has to be a big positive for Cashel now heading into the quarters to get a result like that.
Absolutely. Listen, the Ardrahan game for Cashel, I always felt was a banana skin anyway, because with Joe Leary on the opposition sideline, like, your own club is not going to let it go lightly that they're going to let someone train the team against you. It's just natural. That just happens, and you just raise your performance. And if you get a few points down the stretch, then it's harder to go on. So Ardrahan were probably highly motivated, because otherwise they were going to be out of the championship as well. So, like, the thing is now is Cashel have got this performance. They've been striving for it. But if you look at the results in the league with Cashel have been fairly consistent coming into this championship. Sarsfields are an extremely good team. Same way with Ardrahan. Like we seen with Ardmore the weekend, the score they put up. So Ardmore were able to put it up, and yet Cashel were able to, I suppose, dismantle Ardmore, if you want for a better word, within Imperial Stadium. They were able to take them apart, and it was just a game plan they had. And I felt the last day as well, they had a game plan, they stuck to it, and everyone was working to that game plan. So I suppose Matty and the guys have drilled into them what needs to be drilled into them, and they'll be dangerous opposition from now on, Castlegar.
Just on Kilconieron, it was obviously a positive to get through the prelim, and it's been a common
Yeah.
team. There's obviously huge underage coming, but why do you think they struggled so much to get scores on the board from play at the weekend?
Well, To be fair to Cashel, a lot of that was down to the pressure that were being put under by the Cashel backs or any time they get the ball. So, like, Cashel were really hungry in the middle third. So you'll always hear that if you can win the middle third battle or at least break even, you'll always have a great chance of winning the game. I just felt that Cashel in that middle third were really, really ravenous for ball, and they were putting pressure on. So it's very hard to get scores. And it's very hard to get scores if there's that much pressure put on. And I suppose the Kilconieron team overall wouldn't be as experienced as the Cashel team. And that probably is the number one thing and probably the key thing the weekend that went out. The experience shone through as Cashel knew how to close down. Like Donald Barry was organised and everything. In the back, he was in front of me in the second half. I was standing, he was in front number 7. He was on to lads in front of him and they were moving. Everyone was on it. So when Kilconieron got on the ball, there was heat on them all the time. There was people on them that were making sure they weren't getting pressure. Oscar O'Connor was moved into wing forward, and I don't know, did that move up for Kilconieron? For me, it didn't, because Oscar is busy. So, like, Oscar is a good halfback, a guy facing the ball. He's good there in midfield. I just didn't feel in 10, unless they had a specific role, that worked particularly well for him. So that might have taken him a little bit out of the game, because he's a very good hurler, but just didn't get into it as much the last day. Look, Brian Hickey was really busy around the field. And in fairness up front, like, Keith Burke was good and Sean Connaughton, they were getting on ball, but just not in the areas that you have for scoring, because I just felt Cashel were pushing them outside that scoring zone. And when they were getting a shot, they were shooting kind of from the side and very hard, especially then. And listen, it could be just a thing the occasion got to Kilconieron. I just don't know. But like, to score only 1 point from play out of the 13 and the rest coming from frees, I suppose tells its own story.
It's not to be harsh here and to be like throwing the boot into Kilconieron, but they are an example of one of these senior clubs. If they want to consistently compete, there's a lot of work to be done.
Listen, there's work to be done, but they'll probably acknowledge that themselves. But the key thing for me this year, and I think I said it the first time I was on here, was that Kilconieron weighted senior A this year, because they have young talent coming through, albeit it will take maybe 2 years or 3 years for that all to come together. But the key thing for them was to weight senior A. In fairness to them, they achieved that, and they brought some really good players through, and they developed them. So listen, they'll obviously be disappointed. You'll be disappointed any time you get a good beating like that, and you could see them leaving the dressing room, and even some of them were coming into the stands. Listen, they probably were a little bit disappointed in themselves, didn't show what they can do. But I have no doubt that the club there is a strong club, its own places, their development is really good up there. And I have no doubt that if they put a plan in place for a 2 or 3 year plan and put all the resources in around it, there's no doubt in my mind that there is enough talent coming through. Winning the under-20 this year is a step in the right direction. They're in the minor semi-final next weekend against Turloughmore. They were in the under-16A final against Athenry, very unlucky to be picked there by a point. So they're reaching all the good targets, and if they can bring through 3 to 4 from each of them groups over the next few years, then things will be really healthy up there. And like the last day, while you might say did it all go wrong, like Peter Martin had a really good game. Daniel Kane, I thought, did well. And Brian Hickey was very busy around midfield. And the lads up front were good as well, as I said. Sean Connaughton, Jack Watch tried hard centre forward. And again, Keith Burke, he tried really, really hard as well and was trying to be on it. So it wasn't for the lack of effort, but it just didn't happen for them on the day.
Just on that third game there, then Gerry, Cappataggle 327, Kilconieron 215. On the result that Cappataggle got at the weekend, in fairness to them, out of all the preliminary quarterfinals, they probably did get dealt with the toughest draw, and the manner they came out of it is just really impressive.
Yeah, really, really impressive. Going up, having been up there a few years with them, anytime they met Killimordaly, there was never more than a puck of a ball between them. You know, be that challenge match, be that a league game, be that championship games. You could be 8 points up either way, and the other team would come back. There was just that rivalry there, you know what I mean? And it's a healthy rivalry. You know, there is there's a healthy rivalry. Obviously, when you're on the field, it's on the field and it's tough and it's hard. But off the field, like a lot of them guys are friends off the field. You know what I mean? There's families, and so that there's lots going on. But like Cappataggle, to be fair to them, really went at it the weekend. You know, I know lots of people would have said coming in that if a doubt against Cappataggle, they probably shipped a beating against Turloughmore in the group, and people would be going, God, and then they only got over the line against Mulla. But like that was a huge win for them, first win at senior level for that group. So that had to give them confidence going in. Killimordaly, to be fair, I hadn't seen them playing this year, so I was really looking forward to seeing them playing the last day. But Cappataggle just went about it and tore into it from the start and really started picking point for point early on. And to be fair to Cappataggle, and they just got the scores what mattered early, and when they tagged on one, they tagged on two, and Killimordaly just found it hard to get going. And I don't know, was it they playing a game that wasn't suiting, but I felt they usually are underutilized Brian Concannon a bit. And like Brian, when he gets ball, he is dangerous and he is electric and brings it in. But he started 12, but even when he went inside, I felt the ball wasn't going into him maybe quick enough. And if it was, and there was a 1-on-1 in there, like there's a greater chance for them to score. But take nothing away from Cappataggle. They scored really, really well, and the Collinses were on fire. Like they scored 112 out of 114 in the first half. You know, really, really good. I was delighted to see Liam Collins because I think he shipped a lot of criticism this year since he came back maybe from America that he hadn't been on it or he hadn't been at it. Niall has been consistent this year, really well from play and from frees, and Liam hadn't. But Liam is really, really good and he's really dangerous. So I was delighted to see him the last day get on the scoreboard. He scored, I think it was 1-3 in the first half. Scored a really good goal, and I think actually that goal probably killed the game off in the first half because it meant that they went in 114 to 7 points up, and really at that stage you'll always come out and hope you can go, but we think there was only one winner when you're that far ahead, you know.
Is this the best you feel Cappy are firing under Stephen Craven?
I think Stephen and his management team will be really happy the way they're going, you know. But they won't be foolish enough either to read overly into the game. And again, I suppose who they'll get in the draw, they'll be delighted with the performance because like the forwards are on fire. The people you wanted on fire were on fire. So you had your Collinses, you had Jay Mannion tipping in with 5 points, and Jay was electric. Everywhere he was moving. At one stage in the middle of the field, I think some guy got booked. He gave him a belt. So when Jay is getting the rough treatment, you know Jay is on form, and the other teams kind of pay a little bit, maybe too much special treatment to him. But when Jay is on form, he's electric. He's really, really good. Ronan Garvey was on there the last day, was taking on his man, was causing havoc. John Mitchell in at full forward. In fairness to John, some of his stick work is excellent, and he was causing a bit of trouble in there. But all the backs, as a unit, played really well. Declan Cronin had a man marking job, and he was doing it. And Declan's one of the best man markers still in Galway. Ian Garvey played well. Michael Garvey, Dara Dolan, like all these guys are experienced and have been through a good bit. And even the Rahoon James Egan, and he threw over one of his trademark points from about 65 yards. So like, for now, I'd say Cappataggle are really happy with how the year's gone. So far, they've had 3 victories, and so they'll be really happy. But Stephen will know that he'll still have work to do for the next round, whoever they get. And you know, I don't think Loughrea, Tommy Larkins, or Sarsfields, like, which of them are they really going to fancy facing Cappy after what they've done the last day? Not saying that they wouldn't fancy their chances of beating them, but I think that they know there'll be a serious game after 60 minutes.
And just on it, it's Killimordaly. It's hard to kind of wrap your head around it because there's no doubt about it. They have quality there, but just for whatever reason, it hasn't clicked this year.
It just didn't click for them. Tried really, really hard. I have to say, you know, Darren Daly at 11, I thought, tried really well, really, really hard, very good on the frees. You know, it just didn't, for whatever reason. Jack Fitzpatrick tried hard, but again, it just didn't click on the day. And like Brian Concannon, you could see he was hungry for ball, but he didn't, for me, seem to be getting it as quick as he wanted it. Now maybe that was part of the game plan as well, but it just didn't work out for him. Ian Ryan tried hard, but again, they just seem to be that step off, and Cappy with that step ahead of them. And in the end, you might say the scoreline probably 3-27. It probably reflected bad. And Killimordaly did come back and got the 2 goals, but one of them goals was in the last minute or so. It was merely a consolation goal. So I'd say Killimordaly will be looking at this. And again, they have a few lads coming through, younger lads that will be coming through over the next few years as well, that'll add to them. But I'd say overall this year they'll definitely be a little bit disappointed in the way that finished, for them.
And just for people who aren't aware, the fourth preliminary quarterfinal, Thomas's Crowell, it's Saturday at 2:00 in Kenny Park. Are you expecting Thomas's to get back on track, Gerry, at the weekend?
Yeah, well, I suppose I am. I suppose the last time I went against Crowell, they came out and they beat Mike Cullen. So, I think I expect St. Thomas's to win the game. I am expecting an almighty battle from Crowell, and that's being honest with you, because Crowell have I suppose against Thomas's, they don't really fear Thomas's. And I think Thomas's, there's a record there that Thomas's have only been beaten as a 4 or 5 times in the last couple of years, and that twice Crowell have been the team to turn them over. So there's no doubt Crowell won't fear Thomas's, and they will go in at it, and they will give everything. And I suppose an awful sad occasion last weekend for the Regan family and for the Crowell club, and I'm sure that's going to unite them as well. You know what I mean? That little bit closer. So listen, I went with huge expectations last weekend for 3 really good games, and I was disappointed, I have to say, leaving Athen right. I'm going up again on Saturday, and I hope this game kind of throws up the game that I was expecting last weekend, and that we get a really class game on this weekend. I still think it'll be close, but for me it'll still be Thomas's team, definitely.
Gerry, just so if we're to look at the relegation, and I think this is the biggest surprise of the weekend. Ormore Mary 325, Gort 14 points. I think all Galway Hurling fans were expecting this to be really close, because both sides were just really unfortunate to end up here. But Ormore just went in with this mindset that they didn't want to be here, and they got the business done. But it's really disappointing from a Gort perspective after they showed so many positive signs too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like for Gort, I'd say for Gort, in fairness, going in, I'd say it was really hard for them, in fairness, to probably, even within the 2 weeks, to get over how close they were to taking Thomas's. And going into a relegation game, really it's all down to mindset at that stage, because when you're going into a relegation game, like there's lots going on. Like what way do the club approach it? Are people, how are the players approaching it? How are the clubs themselves approaching it? What's the group? What do they want to achieve? And it looks like that Ardmore just attacked this game, but it was more the second half. The first half was an even enough contest, which I suppose is along the lines we'd have expected. But for whatever reason, Ardmore obviously decided in that dressing room at half time that they weren't leaving Ballinasloe without a win. And like they came out in the second half, and by all accounts, they were like men possessed. And sometimes if a team comes out, and I suppose one of the things probably that Ardmore do have is they have a lot of youth and they have a lot of legs, and they probably just had a bit more that way, maybe in freshness, than Gort coming into it. I still think Gort were maybe a little bit of a hangover from the Thomas's game. Now maybe I'm wrong, but because there's no doubt they have a very good management team, and Gort won't want to be in that position, and they won't want to be in that relegation final. Unfortunately, they're there. For Ardmore, I think it's good as well that they're up. They have the quality. Very, very disappointed, I'm sure, to lose the under 20 this year. Now they're senior A. They have good young lads, and again, they are a senior A team. You know what I mean? And I think Gort are as well, but they'll have to show that now in a relegation final, and they won't want to be there. That's going to be a tough now in 2 weeks' time for them.
At the same time, though, it's not a given that Gort just survive in senior A, because what they've done early on in the championship, that doesn't matter now, because you can say people might say Mulla they haven't shown the quality, but there is an argument there that they've shown the quality, and there's going to be a huge bite in Mulla too because they went toe to toe with Mike Cullen and are just unfortunate to be in a relegation final too. But after a year coming up, you don't want to be going straight back down.
Absolutely not. And like that was a really close game. Like initially, Mulla got a great start, and I say got Mike Cullen in trouble here, and then Mike Cullen just came back and they were well ahead, and Mulla just got another goal, and the next thing they were up, and then Mike Cullen, to be fair to them, tacked on, and they showed their battling qualities. But Gorta be going into that final in a relegation final. Some teams just tighten up, as in the players just it's just not somewhere where you want to be, and it's that week. I was involved in it myself at one stage when I was with a club, and it consumes you. It's all in consuming leading into the game. You think of nothing else, and all you can do as management is get the players to perform on the day and do their own things and get a performance out of them. Mulla are battlers, and to be fair to them, they've probably come through more battles this year than even Gort. To be fair, but I would still expect Gort to shade that, but like just shade it. It's for as a relegation final. I think there'll be only a point either way on that, and I wouldn't be surprised if Mulla came out of it as well. But I would just, from what I've seen at Gort, I just think they will shade it if they can bring the same intensity and the same intent. And intent is the word there for the relegation. They have to come with a real intent to put in a performance as individuals first and then as a team. And whichever team in the relegation final does that and gets the performance, then they'll win it. That's what it'll come down to. It'll really come down to the intent of the team and who gets that performance and gets more individuals to perform on the day. Because it is a big game. It's a big game for both clubs. And you're right, Paul. Mulla won't want to go back down, so that's huge motivation for them. Gort are a really proud club, and they won't want to go down either, down to Senior B. So I think that should definitely be a good battle, and hopefully we'll be proved right.
Just on it, Gerry too, Mike Cullen there, they showed huge battle to get because they were trailing in that game, but even to come back when it was going against them and scrape out the victory and retain their status is huge too because there was probably a lot made of Mike Cullen. They were a terrific team when they had John Hardyman, but maybe that was just documented around this Mike Cullen team a bit too much.
Yeah, no, listen, Mike Cullen have always been difficult to beat, and like even when they were down intermediate, any team that won the county cup at intermediate level, Mike Cullen were down there. They earned it if they met Mike Cullen at quarter-final, semi-final, and in the groups. So when Mike Cullen came up to Senior B and then Senior A, like there's no doubt they have the talent. And I know what you're saying about John Hardiman; he's a fantastic coach, but like John David Kearney is still with Mike Cullen, and he was there last year. So I know, and Queeveen Davern is a good manager, and like they have a strong backbone team, but the hurling out there is really strong, and the hurling people in Mike Cullen are really passionate about their hurling, and they want to be Senior A, and as a club. And I know they're a dual club, but there's not too many dual players. I don't think there's many now that actually play on both squads at senior level. And like Matt Donoghue, an All-Ireland winner 2017 on the squad. And as I said, Ian Noon, he's always there. Niall Mannion, the Daverns. Like these lads know how to win tight games, to give them their due. They've won the Division League title, I think, 2 years ago. They're always competitive. They're battlers, and they have a never say die attitude. And to be fair, that showed because they needed every ounce of that never say die attitude against Mulla. Because as you said earlier, Mulla don't want to go down to Senior B after only coming up. But by God, they put it up to Mike Cullen, and it took every ounce in their bodies to make sure that they got through by that point. But like they scored 23 times versus 18 for Mulla, so that in itself showed you that they were up for the battle as well.
Can you see the power rankings on screen here now, Gerry?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just read them out for people who are listening here on audio. So the Galway Senior Hurling Championship, latest version of the power rankings. Turloughmore in number 1, top of the pile. Loughrea second, St. Thomas's third, Sarsfield's fourth, Tommy Larkin 5th, Clarinbridge 6th, so they've all remained and were there. Cappataggle 7th, up 1 place. Castlegar 8th, up 1 place, and then Ormore Mary up 3 places. Just the way they, I suppose, hammered Gort really is the most impressive thing there. Crowell remain in 10th, and they obviously have that prelim to come with Thomas's. Ardrahan then they're down 4 places in 11th place. Climberdale are up 1 place into 12th. That's more so just teams moving down. So they just went up 1 place, which that resulted in Mike Cullen up 3 places after their narrow victory over Mulla. Kilconieron they're in 14th, and probably just there, but as we mentioned, they scored 1 point from play. Gort they're down 5 places in 15th place, and Mulla down 1 place there in 16th. Is that how you see the general landscape of things, Gerry?
I think it is at the moment, bar obviously with respect to Crawford, we'll see how this weekend's game goes. But I think at the moment, I think no one could argue with the rankings there.
Yeah, so it will be interesting to see there how the senior evolves. If we are to look at the senior B, Gerry, we're actually going to look at the relegation game first because it just really had Everton, Hascrofona 119, Behead 119, and I think a lot of hurling fans really have to be delighted that Dahi Kane was the one who hit the equaliser after just that horrific injury last year he got. I think it was in the quarter final of the Senior B Championship against
Right.
Kilnadeema Leach from last year, where he
Kilnadeema, yeah,
and
slow. I was at
yeah
it, yeah.
he broke the leg there obviously, and it just wasn't nice seeing. So a really nice moment for him to equalise a relegation final and send it to a replay.
Absolutely. Like, in fairness to the game and listening to it, it was ebbing and flowing. Like Haskell really had a really good first half, but Beha, like have always, are real battlers. And you know when it mattered most down the stretch, I think they scored the last 4 points in a row from the 57th minute onwards. They scored the last 4 points to equalise the game. So, like as you said, Dahi got the poignant moment for him, for the club. It'll give them great motivation going in the next game for a Haskell, considering last year they were in the Senior B final. Like
Yeah.
it's probably for them, they'll probably look back after the weekend and go, God, have we missed a chance? Because last year they were going into the replay probably this, in a few weeks' time, and they were really thinking, right, we could actually be going Senior A here. Now, two weeks' time when they're going back, they could be heading down to intermediate. So like it's it's how they react to this now, because they have come back and they have a proud tradition, and again that will be a really close game in 2 weeks' time, and it'll be very hard to call.
It's tough for both of those teams. Like I know they'll be happy to get to go again and they didn't lose the game, but just for as you mentioned, all that emotion that goes into a relegation final and to do it all again now and next weekend.
Yeah, no, listen, there's no doubt. It's because like it's a final, but it's nearly wrong to call it a final, because it's like you win and you're not going, but it's for a team that goes down, it's really really tough. You know what I mean? It's the whole club is nearly on a downer. And you have two fine clubs here that one of them is going to be going down to intermediate, but like that's the rules of the competition. Everyone knows that at the start of the season. Unfortunately, like everywhere, there has to be winners and there has to be losers. And I think for the weekend, whoever goes down next weekend, it's going to be tough for them. But like you'd have to say, a Haskell coming back from 4 down with 5 minutes to go and into injury time, and an equalising point, you have to think the momentum's a little bit with them now, and how a Haskell will react these 2 weeks now, to that setback for them. How can they drive on and prove that? I suppose even they have the benefit of last year. I know they lost the replay, but how did they approach that? Did they learn anything from that? Take into this that they can take in here, and how can they prep for these 2 weeks? Because it's crucial for both clubs. They're two proud clubs, and they neither of them will want to go down to intermediate.
On the two Senior B quarterfinals, Portumna progressed, Lee Mellows progress, which sees now the Senior B semi-finals as Athenry, Lee Mellows, they've already played each other, and Portumna and Ballindereen, which two mouthwatering semi-finals there. If we are to look at Portumna's victory over Kilnadeema Leitrim, Portumna 320, Kilnadeema Leitrim 220. Portumna getting to a semi-final, and there's only one. A lot of people will always reference Joe, and he obviously still has it, but getting Declan McLaughlin back on the pitch and getting him back on the field has been absolutely huge to Portumna being in this last four.
Absolutely, like Declan is a county player, you know, and he's playing a county standard, and to get him back in the pitch, him being missing for the group stages, I think he might have played the last group game, but other than that, he was missing. So, like, to get him back on the pitch must be a massive lift for that players, because even for Joe as well, because to be fair to Joe, there was a huge burden on when he wasn't there, when Declan wasn't there. Now Ronan O'Mara is there as well, and fairness to Ronan, he's a class player as well. So now you're talking about you three really good Portumna forwards that teams are all going to have to say, if you were man marking, who are you going to man mark, and how are you going to man mark them, how are you going to set up, and depending on how Portumna moves that around. So now Portumna have a real threat again up front. I'm not saying they didn't have real threats up front, but to me early on they weren't really firing up front, and I felt Joe was carrying a lot of that burden. But now I think that they're starting to move a little bit up there again, and I think Jack has gone outfield now as well, and he's added a little bit, I suppose, a little bit of strength up there as well, which the likes of Ronan and Declan will like, because he'll do the donkey work and break the ball for them, and they're able to do the finishing. Like, it was a really good score that they put up the last day, really high scoring game, like 540 in a game of hurling, like really across. That's really good hurling. And Joe got a crucial penalty before half time. But sure, who else would you want in any club? If you ask any club, who else would you want to be standing up to a penalty with pressure coming into half time but Joe Kenny? Because, like, as a goalkeeper, you wouldn't want to be facing Joe Kenny. You know what I mean? He just has that aura about him. He's a really good free taker, really good penalty taker. So, you know, when cometh the hour, cometh the man, he put the ball in. So they were going into half time and really upward curve. So you can only imagine that Portumna dressing room was really bouncing at half time. And then they came out to start the second half. I think Kilnadeema got the first point, and then Portumna got a goal straight away as well. Do you know what I mean? Really tough. But Kilnadeema, to be fair with them, Paul, really stuck in there. You know, they gave it everything. Like, they died with their boots on, to be fair to them, and there was only a goal in it in the end. So there's no disgrace in scoring 220 and losing by a goal, to be fair.
I'm not sure we on at the time, but I did reference it where I felt the Athenry group was a bit stronger than the other group, that there was a bit of an imbalance there, and it kind of has resulted in that when you've now see that the three teams from the one group have ended up obviously in the semi-finals, and a Haskell, the other team in the group, are in the relegation finals then.
Yeah. Listen, I think when the draw was made, there was definitely a group of death, and people would have said the other side was probably the easier side. And listen, three teams have come out of that side now. So, you know, results don't lie either, you know. So I suppose at this stage of the competition as well, any team can have a blip. So I suppose you'll say Mellows maybe had a blip, or they'll see it as a blip in the first round against Ardrahan were really impressive. And I wouldn't see it as a blip. I just think Ardrahan are a really good team. They played in Division 1 in the league, so, you know, they know how to play hurling. They've John Hardyman over them, and Niall Sunderland. They have a really good management team. So it's just that side was that little bit stronger, and that probably showed through. But I think, to be fair to weekend, Mellows didn't get it all their own way, probably surprisingly to most people. I think a lot of people had written off Pearce's. Also, all the talk going into that game was this Mellows team couldn't be stopped scoring from goals, yet they didn't really get a sniff of a goal against Pearce's. So you have to give Pearce's and their management team, led by Shane Raftery and Sir Donnan, great credit for that. You know, they obviously had a game plan and they set up. And, like, I know the first half got away. There was two periods there in the first half where Mellow scored 2 banks of 5 points, either side of Pearce's getting a point or so in the middle. And that led to a 15-5 half time. But, like, in the second half, to be fair to Pearce's, they outscored them 196 points. You know, and, like, outside of Athenry this year, that was probably the one team that put it up to them. So you'd have to give, last year there was 14 points in that a defeat for Pierce's, and like Mello scored 320 or something, but this year there's 4 points. So I think Pierce's, probably for them, they'll probably see it as probably progress, because from last year, probably the game that undid them is the Ballinderreen game. So there was nothing in that game, and as it turned out, that in the Kilnadeema, but definitely the Ballinderreen game. I think if Pierce's had got anything out of that game, they'd have been a better state. It just didn't work for them in that day after half time. The third quarter undid them. But I think they'll probably be satisfied. Mellows will be happy. I think Mellows will be happy with the draw. That's just my own opinion. They're playing Athenry. Athenry beat them in the first round. With all the analysis that's going now, I'm sure they'll have all the analysis done. They'll know where Athenry's strengths or weaknesses are. David Collins will have them ready for it. I think the second half, the last day, he'll probably have a bit of a stick to beat Mellows with now, from the point of view of Pierce's ran them really close and came with a game plan. I'm sure the Athenry management were there. They might have looked at what Pierce's did or how they stemmed the tide or whatever on that. So I think Mellows will go in. Probably people are saying Mellows will be favourites for that game. It'll be a 50-50 game, but it'll be a good game of hurling. That'll be a good game of hurling. But I think
they're both 50-50 games though, really, aren't they?
They are, yeah. No, they are. They are, to be fair. You would say Ballinderreen coming up from intermediate, they've really the only blip really is that game against Beha in the last round. They were in, and maybe I know I probably mentioned this a lot, mentality, but I don't know, going into that game, was it like they qualified no matter what happened, they couldn't be topped, whether it was that, and Beha just probably went out and wanted to give themselves a performance and a boost, and probably that performance they put on that day probably helped them against the Haspra, because they did it against Ballinderreen and probably brought that in the second half against the Haspra. They kept going because they finished off Ballinderreen in the second half really well, and they probably had that belief coming out at half time against the Haspra. Although they were 6 down, we can go at that. So listen, Ballinderreen and Portumna, it'll be a 50-50 game. I would think Portumna will probably have a little bit more scoring power, but Ballinderreen will have nothing to lose in that game, and I think they will throw absolutely everything at Portumna, and there'll be 2 good games. It'll be a good. If it's a double hitter, it'll be a very good double hitter.
If we're to look then, Gerry, at the intermediate, obviously, as I mentioned at the outset of the show, 3 of those games took place over the weekend, and the other preliminary quarterfinal, the refixed one between Killimordaly and Crowell, that takes place tomorrow evening under lights. So that in Duggan Park there. So that's a midweek game if people are looking for one to attend. That'll be taking place. But we'll look at the closest quarterfinal first. It's Abbeynockmoy and Ceylon. It was the closest one we had all weekend, but Ceylon got over the line here in the end.
Yeah, Ceylon got over the line. Like I'm not too surprised Ceylon got over the line. Ceylon are a really good hurling team. They're well coached. Abbey are just real battlers. I don't know, was it 13 or 14 points Paul Flaherty scored the weekend? Like he's just
15, I think, yeah. In the end.
Is it something like, in fairness to him, he's absolutely phenomenal for the club and always has been. And really good for Abbeynockmoy. And that was nip and tuck into the goal. And the goal decided in the end, because like they'd only, I think, put Ceylon a point up or maybe 2 points up, but it just allowed them that comfort and that cushion to push on. And Abbey would probably be happy enough with their year. I'm sure they'd have loved to have gone further, but for me, Ceylon, I would have fancied Ceylon for this game, so I wasn't too surprised that they came out on top.
In the end there, I think it was John Igo, he finished with 1-4, and it seemed to be critical because a lot of the scores he seemed to get were towards the end, which saw Ceylon over the line here.
Yeah, and to be fair to John Igo, you normally, when you're looking at the scores on the Ceylon, especially when you're looking for so who hit the onion bag, it's John Igo is the name that goes with it. He's really good. He seems to come up with crucial scores at crucial times, either himself or Sean Newell, but John is normally more linked with the goals. And like Ceylon have been very close the last few years, 2 semi-finals, really good. They might have lost 1 or 2 players this year due to injury, but no team will fancy playing Ceylon either now. in the preliminary quarterfinals, or in the quarterfinals. So it'll be really good, and it's good to see them progressing again, because like they could have taken a big knock after last year after losing the semi-final, but again it's progress, and they're through to the quarterfinal again. So far the year is going well for them, and they've the quarterfinal to look forward to.
It is one of those things you're looking at, even from the teams who won the prelim, like Ballindereen last year, the prime example of a team that played the prelim and won the county title. So even when it comes to even the senior or the intermediate prelims, sometimes these games aren't the worst things for teams at all.
No, and like the thing about it is that I've had a really tough game against Abbey-Knockmoy. So when you beat Abbey-Knockmoy, you'll have been in a game. You know, they always are. They're a really proud traditional club, and they give it everything for their club. And so I always admire that about them. And Ceylon have come out the right side of that. So that will have to give them confidence that they were in a battle. So whoever they get the next day, they'll have been in the battle. They'll know that. They know how to handle that, you know. So again, it's the look at the draw for me now as well. Heading, it'll be the same with the senior. Weather conditions will have a big part to play as well as we go on from now on. You know, whether it's rain, blustery, whatever. It's like from quarterfinals on now. It should be a puck of a ball. So everything is in play now between weather conditions. Look, panels coming together from now on, and like every dressing room now, be it in senior or in intermediate, they'll all believe they can win that trophy. So you know, it's really really exciting for the next few weeks ahead. I think there's some good games ahead. I hope I'm right that there's some good games ahead and good battles on the pitches. You know.
Yeah, we must say it about your own club from what's happening across the board here. Seniors in a really good position. Won the 20s last week. Again, I think second in 3 years. Intermediates beat Ballygar, who showed really well this year in the intermediate championship. They win 215 to 113. Like that's a massive result for the Turlough Intermediates too as well.
Yeah, to be fair, I wasn't overly surprised, because winning the 20s has been massive for the club, and like it's not even winning the 20, like winning the 20s this year was massive against Clarinbridge, especially because they got a good trimming above in the group stages in Clarinbridge, you know. And the only thing about that team and that 20s group is that when it came to finals, no matter how they were playing during the year, once they got to the finals, whatever it was with that group, and I go down through them from Darragh Walsh to Killian Whelan to Tom Nolan to Garrod Fahy, Owen Keneally, all those guys, they always performed on the big day. And I watched them from 14s up. They've always done it on the big day. So winning the 20s 2 years ago as well, I suppose a lot of people looking in say, oh, it's Turloughmore second team, but there's an awful lot of winning experience within that team. And I suppose, Paul, the fact that the Maroon White, all three of the guys went against them for that was a little bit of motivation as well, that all three pundits went against them. And, you know, little things like that, you know, within a dressing room kind of can stir up. But, like, they were going in a good frame of mind, you know. It did help them a little bit disappointed for our junior Bs on Saturday. Very unlucky, I suppose, in the semi-final against Cashel. Cashel were deserving winners on the day, absolutely they were. And it didn't go well for them. But Turlough losing that junior B allowed a few players like Dara Joyce and Ronan Badger and Brian Murphy to go and be part of the intermediate squad the next day. And I know Dara Joyce came on, and I think in the second half came on, had a major influence. He tied things down. Like Dara played senior hurling 2 years ago, so like he has lots of experience, and they just had their matchups. They had a few lads come back. Fergal Moore came back, and Ryan Rabbit came back. So like of that, Turloughmore they were quietly confident going in, not taken away from Ballygar. Like I went to the under 20 final, seeing Ballygar, Joey Wallace very impressive, and Stephen Nolan very impressive. Like they had really good players, but on the day, Turlough just started really well and got a run on them. And I think then just to start the second half, Turlough got a run where they got, I think, 4 or 5 points in a row. And Ballygar were playing catch up and had to push on a little bit. And then Turlough finished off with 3 points in a row. So, like the Turloughmore management under Liam Rabbit, you know, they'll be really happy. They're the same management that was over the under 20, where Brian Murphy was the manager and Liam was the selector, and just they're the same. So, like, they're experienced. The guys are there winning 2 20s in the last. All them players are there now, and they're coming through there. They're solid down through the middle, Sean Lyons. You have Brian Connolly, who plays football for Claregal, a great engine, back, centre back. Cahill Shaughnessy had a really good game. Luke Williams, Mark Fahey, who's had loads of senior experience. And like in Turloughmore, they're blessed with goalkeepers, all the way up along. So Mark is in goal. He scored the first goal, believe it or not, the last day. Long range free that went into the net. And like in fairness, that Ballygar goalie has been outstanding all year. So listen, Turlough will be really happy. Tom Nolan played well. David McDonough, or not David, sorry, played well, but they all played as a team on the day, and they got over the line. And I think the overriding emotion was they're happy to be in a quarter final. But again, I think whoever will get Turloughmore won't take them lightly in the quarter final. And it's a challenge, like going from relegation last year with mostly the same players, bar one or two additions of the younger guys coming through, to now being in a quarter final is real progress. And for the club, it's real progress for us to have two really competitive teams, the senior team going really well, and you want your intermediate team going well as well. And they're training together, so it's rubbing off. These guys are training with the likes of Dahi and Ronan Burke, Sean Loftus, Connor Welch, Daniel Loftus. So like that's only going to drive standards, So they're training in a really good training environment, and they train together then coming up to the games themselves as a group. So they're gelling well together, and they're in the quarterfinal now. I'm sure Ballygar might have a bit of regret because Ballygar bet drew Milik Airport, which is a really, really good result, and stood out. And I don't think Ballygar would have underestimated Turlough because it was their second team, but that was Turlough's, I don't know was it a factor, but that was Turlough's third time to playing you in this year. And sometimes familiarity with a venue can be huge, and that just on the day the things just went their way. So onwards and upwards for them.
On the third one there, Gerry, Rahoon 425, Clarinbridge 17 points. The margin of the victory, the biggest surprise here, because expected this one to be a close one. Rahoon obviously got that big result in the group, but then they got a bit of a shipping to Milik Aircourt in their last game, but they've got another big result here now to get them into the last eight.
Yeah, they did. To be fairness with Rahoon, I think I know some people were tipping maybe Clarinbridge to win this game, but from afar, I wouldn't have predicted Clarinbridge to win it. And really, what I was saying is, I just felt they'd lost probably 3 or 4 of their top line players to the senior squad, and that can have effect because then you're really going down along, and as a lot of your younger players, then you're coming up against a really experienced team in Rahoon, like Tony O'Gregan and Willie Mackey. These guys are really, really good seasoned hurlers, you know what I mean? And they've probably seen that as well, that maybe people were writing them off and saying Clarinbridge were going to roll them over. And like Rahoon are a club on the up, like they're really progressive at underage. They're under 12s, under 13s, under 14s. They're competing in the A levels or A1, you know what I mean? And they're really on the up. So the club, it's a club that's on the up there, and they're so the margin of the victory, I was probably surprised. But I wasn't surprised that Rahoon won it, but probably the margin of the victory was. But again, Rahoon have been there or thereabouts the last few years, and I suppose their management team this year, after shipping the thing the last year, that would have hurt them. You know what I mean? It would have hurt them because they weren't used to that type of defeats over the last few years. So sometimes when I suppose it's do you circle the wagons here or do you throw in the towel? And I think they just circled the wagons and said, lads, this is not us. And fair play to them. You have to admire them for that. They went at it, and Clarinbridge came out on the wrong side of that because Rahoon just wanted it more on the day, obviously, and fair play to them and well done.
So just on that intermediate quarterfinal, you're going to have here in one pot, Ceylon, Rahoon, Newcastle, and Turloughmore, and then you're going to have Tina Aberdeenry, Kinvara, Carnmore, and Milik Aircourt in the other pot, and then Clymer Crowell will join Ceylon, Rahoon, and Turlough then as the fourth team, and first, and the team that came through the prelims would cross play each other. Gerry, just on it because it is a question we got in from a listener, and I think it's a good point. We were talking about the same in the football last week. Is there a need for preliminary quarterfinals?
I genuinely think because the club players don't get enough hurling action during the years in top class hurling action. I personally don't think having a Premier League quarter final is a bad thing, because I think it prolongs the year for the clubs. Do you know what I mean? And it gives, and apart, if you look at it over the last few years, the Premier League quarterfinals have been some classic games. You know what I mean? And maybe people are probably asking this year because the score lines are different, and there's such a big margin, whether there's a need for it. But I think, to be quite honest with you, it gives that bite, and it gives clubs, even on the last day of the group championships in senior and intermediate or senior B, it gives you that lifeline that, you know what, I still have something to play for here. You know what I mean? I can still actually qualify here. And listen, then it's up to yourself how it goes after that, but it still has a lifeline. For me, I think the Premier League quarterfinals are not a bad thing for hurling. And I think it's an extra weekend in the calendar, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing.
Just the two intermediate relegation semi-finals. So it's Ghana Montbellew 17 points, Kilbacon 7, Down 317, Kiltormer 112. Down and Ghana Montbellew retained their status. Kilbacon and Kiltormer find themselves in the relegation final.
Yeah, listen, what I'd say here is I'm not overly surprised. I was at the Turlough Kiltormer game early on, and fairness to Kiltormer at the time, they had a lot of injuries and that, and things weren't going well for them. And by all accounts, they put up a good battle the last night. Do you know what I mean? But I would have expected Down to come through that. So, Down are definitely, last year Down were actually really, really good. They were competitive in all their games. The year before, I think they were knocked out by like a puck of a ball, out of the championship. So like they're thereabouts every year. The second game, Ishkabelu, margin of victory, I'm a bit surprised. The 10 points, but again, they had a really positive result against Ballygar in the last group game. We were probably coming in here cock-a-hoop, as in they had something that behind them tangible to say, listen, we actually were playing well here and we're coming in. Kilbacon, to be fair, haven't had a great season. It just hasn't gone well for them. It just hasn't gone well for them. They were in the relegation last year as well. Won the relegation semi-final last year, and are back now. They're in the relegation final this year. So, like, again, there won't be much in that relegation final, I would say. And again, like the senior A, neither of these clubs will want to go down. And Kiltormer definitely, I suppose, with their history in that, won't want to go down to Junior B. But I suppose what I'd say on that is that while clubs are proud and they have proud traditions, I suppose it always goes in cycles, and just sometimes the cycle of players are not there. And like for either Kilbacon or Kiltormer, when they go down, they're both, I suppose, if you look at it at underage, they're dual clubs at underage, so they're joined up with other clubs, and that yet at senior level they're trying to be their own identity. You know what I mean? Whereas at underage they're joined up, so that's always harder, I feel. So I suppose both of them are doing that, and they're in the final now. So one of them is going to drop. Who it'll be, I don't know. If I was to call it, I'd probably say it probably is Kiltormer, but I don't think if Kiltormer were to survive, I wouldn't be surprised either.
Yeah, so just on that for Kiltormer, Kilbacon, their place next year is going to be taken by it's going to be a club second team, and that club second team is either going to be Ardrahan, Sarsfields, and Thomas's. They're all into the semi-final. Loughrea play Ballindereen this week in the quarter-final. So one of those 5 teams is going to come up to intermediate next year and take one of those clubs' place.
Yeah, like Junior A is really competitive this year, and like if you're at the Rise, you have your Sarsfields, you said there, all those clubs are really putting in phenomenal work, and now they're reaping the rewards. And even last weekend at the Rise beat on Spidgel, and like anytime you beat Spidgel, and it's a good day, but they actually beat them well, which I was a bit surprised with, because I know Spittle were beaten in the relegation final last year, but like there's always a good kick in them. But they Athenry did a good number on them and played well. So listen, that junior A is going to be really competitive. So whoever replaces these teams, they will be looking to kick on. It won't be a thing that they'll be, their first thought will be, oh God, we're up now, we'll be going down, because any of the teams in the last few years that come up from junior A, they've actually survived and done really, really well in intermediate, you know.
Yeah, and in the Junior One Championship, they're at the semi-final stage. There was probably maybe a bit of an upset at the weekend. Berna, they bet Saltillochnacara in the quarterfinals. So the semi-finals now, which in these two Junior One semi-finals, you have three clubs from Connemara, and so the semi-finals are on Spitdale, Mihal Brannocks, and Berna Ballinasloe in those two Junior One semi-finals. And the winner of this, Gerry, of course, goes on and goes forward to represent Galway and Connacht. And if they get past that, they obviously go on to the All Ireland series then.
Yeah, and like last year Ballinasloe won this competition. Am I right
Yeah,
in saying that? Yeah, so Ballinasloe won that. They played before the county final. Yeah, so Ballinasloe beat Salt Hill last year. So like that would be a big setback for Salt Hill now, having done Loche in their ranks and that, and losing in the final of it last year. So that was an upset. But again, that's a local derby, and like any local derby, it can go either way. So Ballinasloe will have it all to do to regain the title, I think, here. Spittle, although they got beaten the weekend, they will be hard bet in this now, in the junior one. So like this is, as you said, it's not just about your county title now. These clubs will see it as there's a chance to win a Connacht title here, and there's even a chance of getting into the All Ireland series. Although that is a much different, a trickier one to do when you're coming up against Kilkenny's and the Corks of these teams. But like winning Galway will be a massive prize for these clubs, and I think it's a great competition for these clubs it is their first teams that they have this competition, because again, it's reward for them, and even for the hurling to see three Connemara teams at this stage of the competition is a real positive and is good for the development of hurling in Connemara as well.
absolutely. And they're all coming up over the next few weeks. But that is all we do have time for on this evening. Show a huge amount of action to get through there this evening. But thanks a million to Gerry for coming on this evening.